Jake Morrison checked the fuel readings on his cargo ship one more time. The numbers were not good. He had enough power to reach the next station, but just barely. His ship, the Star Runner, was old and needed repairs. Jake had been making supply runs between human colonies for 3 years now. It was boring work, but it paid the bills. He was heading to Colony 7 with medical supplies when everything went wrong. The warning lights on his control panel started flashing red. Jake looked at his screens and felt his stomach drop. 3 large ships had appeared out of nowhere. They were unlike anything he had ever seen before. The ships were dark gray and covered in strange symbols. They moved in perfect formation toward his small cargo vessel. Jake tried to contact them on the radio but got no response. He attempted to turn his ship around, but it was too late. A bright blue beam shot out from the lead ship and hit the Star Runner. Jake's engines died instantly. His ship went dark, except for the emergency lights. He tried to restart the systems, but nothing worked. The blue beam had shut down everything electronic on his ship. Jake was trapped, floating helplessly in space while the alien vessels moved closer. A voice came through his radio speakers. It spoke in broken English with a harsh, clicking sound. "Human vessel, you are now prisoner of Zephyrian Empire. Do not resist. We come aboard now." Jake had heard stories about alien raiders, but he never thought he would meet them. The Zephyrians were known throughout human space as slave traders and pirates. They captured people from different worlds and used them for entertainment in their arena fights. Most humans who encountered them were never seen again. Jake grabbed his emergency kit and thought about hiding, but where could he go on a small cargo ship? The Star Runner was tiny compared to the alien vessels. He could hear strange sounds coming from outside his hull. They were cutting through his ship's outer door. The door to his cargo bay exploded inward with a loud bang. Smoke filled the air as tall, insect-like creatures walked into his ship. The Zephyrian stood over 7 feet tall with 4 arms and dark, shiny skin that looked like armor. Their faces were long and narrow, with large, black eyes that reflected the emergency lights. The leader of the group pointed at Jake with one of its 4 hands. When it spoke, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. "You are the human pilot. You come with us now. No fighting or we hurt you bad." Jake raised his hands to show he was not armed. "What do you want with me? I'm just a cargo pilot. I have nothing valuable." The Zephyrian made a sound that might have been laughter. "You wrong, human. You very valuable to us. Our arena needs new fighters. Crowd gets bored with same battles. Fresh meat always welcome." 2 other Zephyrians grabbed Jake by his arms. Their grip was incredibly strong. Jake tried to pull away, but it was like fighting against metal clamps. They dragged him out of his ship and threw a connecting tube into their vessel. The inside of the Zephyrian ship was dark and smelled like oil and decay. The walls were covered in what looked like scratches from claws. Jake saw other prisoners, locked in metal cages along the corridor. Most were species he did not recognize, but he spotted 2 other humans in separate cells. They looked thin and scared. The Zephyrians threw Jake into an empty cage and locked it with an electronic seal. The cage was barely big enough for him to stand up straight. There was a small water dispenser and a slot where they could push food through the bars. "Welcome to your new home, human," the leader said. "Enjoy the trip. When we reach Arena World, you fight for your life. Maybe you live long enough to entertain crowd. Most humans die quick. Very disappointing." Jake sat down on the cold metal floor of his cage. The reality of his situation was starting to sink in. He was going to be forced to fight in some kind of alien gladiator arena. From what he had heard about Zephyrian entertainment, the fights were usually to the death. The ship began to move, and Jake felt the slight vibration of engines starting up. Through a small window in the corridor, he could see his cargo ship, being left behind in space. Everything he owned was on that vessel, including the medical supplies that Colony 7 desperately needed. Over the next several days, Jake tried to learn more about his situation. The Zephyrian guards brought him food that tasted awful but kept him alive. He managed to talk to some of the other prisoners when the guards were not around. An alien with blue skin and 6 arms told him about the arena. They call it the Blood Circle. Prisoners fight against each other or against their trained beasts. Crowd bets on who will die first. Winners sometimes get to live another day. Losers feed the creatures. Jake asked what kind of beast they used. The blue alien's expression grew dark. Worst is the Vorthak. Giant predator with claws like swords. Never been defeated in arena. They save it for special shows when they want. Crowd really excited? One of the human prisoners, a woman named Susan, had survived 3 fights already. She had cuts and scars all over her arms and face. The key is to stay moving, she told Jake quietly. Most of the creatures are strong but not very smart. If you can tire them out or trick them, you might have a chance. Jake nodded, but he was not feeling confident. He had never been in a real fight in his life. His job as a cargo pilot was peaceful and quiet. The most dangerous thing he usually dealt with was bad weather or equipment failure. The Zephyrian ship finally arrived at its destination after a week of travel. Jake looked out the window and saw a massive space station shaped like a wheel. Lights covered its surface and dozens of ships were docked around its edges. This was the arena world that the other prisoners had told him about as they were taken. Off the ship, Jake got his first close look at the arena complex. It was enormous with multiple levels and sections. He could hear the sound of crowds cheering and roaring from somewhere deep inside the structure. The noise made his blood run cold. Commander Vextar, the arena overseer, was waiting for the new prisoners. He was the largest Zephyrian Jake had seen yet, with scars covering his armor-like skin and gold decorations on his arms. His black eyes studied each prisoner like he was examining pieces of meat. Fresh blood for the arena, Vextar said in perfect English. Humans always popular with crowd. They make such interesting sounds when they die. He walked up to Jake and looked him up and down. This one looks weak. Probably last 30 seconds against a training beast. Jake was taken to a holding area beneath the main arena. The sound of fighting and screaming echoed through the walls. Other prisoners sat in their cells, some praying, others just staring at nothing. The smell of fear and death filled the air. A guard threw Jake into a cell with a metal bed and a small sink. Rest well, human, the guard said. Tomorrow you fight. Arena Master wants to test new prisoners quickly, see if you're worth keeping alive for bigger shows. Jake sat on his bed and tried to think of a plan. He had less than 24 hours before he would be thrown into the arena to fight for his life. He had no weapons, no armor, and no experience with combat. The odds of survival seemed impossible, but Jake Morrison had not survived 3 years of dangerous cargo runs through space by giving up when things looked bad. He started doing push-ups and stretches, trying to get his body ready for whatever was coming. If he was going to die tomorrow, he would at least put up a fight. Jake woke up to the sound of metal doors opening. He had barely slept during the night, listening to the distant sounds of fighting and screaming from the arena above. His body felt stiff, and his mouth was dry with fear. 2 Zephyrian guards stood outside his cell. They wore thick armor and carried electric shock sticks. One of them spoke in the harsh, clicking language they used among themselves. The other one looked at Jake and smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Time for your first fight, human, the guard said in broken English. Arena Master wants to see what you can do. If you boring, we feed you to bigger creatures later. They put heavy metal chains around Jake's wrists and ankles. The chains were connected to each other, making it hard for him to move quickly. Jake asked what he would be fighting, but the guards just laughed and pushed him forward. The walk to the arena felt like the longest of Jake's life. They went through dark corridors lined with cages full of prisoners and strange creatures. Some of the beasts roared and threw themselves against their cage doors when they saw Jake pass by. The smell was terrible, like rotting meat and fear. Finally, they reached a large metal door with symbols carved into it. Jake could hear the sound of thousands of voices on the other side. The crowd was already excited, waiting for the next fight to begin. One of the guards removed Jake's chains but left his hands tied behind his back. Remember, human, the guard said. Crowd wants good show. Fight hard or die quick. Either way, they be entertained. The metal door opened with a loud grinding sound. Bright lights hit Jake's eyes, making him squint. He was pushed forward onto the sandy floor of a massive circular arena. The walls rose up 30 feet on all sides, too high and smooth to climb. Above him, thousands of Zephyrians filled the stadium seats, their black eyes gleaming with excitement. Commander Vextar stood in a special viewing box high above the arena floor. His voice boomed through speakers placed around the stadium. "Citizens of the Empire, today we test new human prisoner. Will he provide entertainment, or will he disappoint us like so many others?" The crowd made clicking and hissing sounds that Jake guessed was their version of cheering. Many of them held betting tablets, probably wagering on how long he would survive. Jake looked around the arena and saw scattered pieces of broken weapons and armor from previous fights. Bones were mixed in with the sand in some places. A guard cut the ropes around Jake's wrists, freeing his hands. "You have 5 minutes before we release your opponent," Vextar announced. "Use this time to prepare yourself if you can." Jake ran to the nearest pile of debris and started looking for anything useful. Most of the weapons were broken or too damaged to use effectively. He found a piece of metal pipe about 3 feet long that felt solid in his hands. There was also a dented shield that might protect him from 1 or 2 attacks. The crowd grew louder as a large gate on the opposite side of the arena began to open. Jake felt his heart pounding as he gripped the metal pipe and tried to remember everything Susan had told him about surviving in the arena. "Stay moving," she had said. "Try to tire out your opponent." What came through the gate was not what Jake had expected. Instead of another prisoner or a small training beast, a massive creature emerged from the darkness. It stood 12 feet tall on 6 powerful legs, with arms that ended in claws as long as kitchen knives. Its hide looked like black armor, and its red eyes glowed in the arena lights. The crowd erupted in excited clicking and hissing. This was clearly not a normal first fight for new prisoners. Jake heard Vextar's voice over the speakers again. "Special treat today. We present the Vorthak. This beast has never been defeated in our arena. 37 victories, 37 kills." Jake felt his legs go weak. The other prisoners had mentioned the Vorthak as the arena's ultimate predator. It was supposed to be saved for special events, not thrown against new prisoners on their first day. Someone had decided to make an example of him. The Vorthak looked at Jake and made a sound like grinding metal. Its 6 legs moved in perfect coordination as it began stalking toward him. Jake noticed that despite its size, the creature moved with surprising grace and speed. This was a born killer, bred and trained for the arena. Jake forced himself to think clearly despite his terror. The creature was big and strong, but that might also make it slow to change direction. He needed to use the arena's space and the scattered debris to his advantage. Running in a straight line would just make him an easy target. As the Vorthak charged at him, Jake dove to the side at the last second. The creature's claws scraped against the arena wall where Jake had been standing, leaving deep gouges in the stone. Jake rolled behind a pile of broken armor and tried to catch his breath. The crowd seemed surprised that Jake had avoided the first attack. Most prisoners probably just stood there in fear until the Vorthak killed them. Jake could hear their clicking. Sounds change pitch like they were confused or maybe slightly impressed. The Vorthak turned toward Jake's hiding spot and approached more carefully this time. It had learned that its prey was not going to be completely helpless. Jake waited until the creature was close, then threw a handful of sand at its glowing red eyes. The Vorthak roared in anger and pain, shaking its massive head to clear its vision. Jake used this moment to strike with his metal pipe, hitting the creature hard on one of its front legs. The pipe rang like a bell when it connected with the armored hide, but it left a small dent. Now Jake had the creature's full attention. The Vorthak forgot about being careful and lunged at him with all 6 claws extended. Jake barely managed to get his dented shield up in time. The claws tore through the metal like paper, but the shield slowed the attack enough for Jake to escape with only shallow cuts on his arm. Jake kept moving, using the arena's debris and walls to stay away from the Vorthak's powerful attacks. He realized that the creature, despite its intelligence, was getting frustrated. It was used to quick kills, not extended fights. Every time it missed, it became a little more angry and a little less careful. The crowd was definitely paying attention. Now, the clicking and hissing had changed to what sounded like actual excitement. Jake could see some of the Zephyrians leaning forward in their seats, watching his every move. They had expected him to die in the first 30 seconds, but he was still alive after several minutes. Jake noticed something important about the Vorthak's attack pattern. The creature always struck with its front claws first, then tried to use its back legs to pin down prey. If he could time it right, he might be able to get under its guard when it committed to a front attack. The next time the Vorthak charged, Jake waited until the very last moment. As the front claws came down toward him, he dropped to the ground and rolled between the creature's legs. The Vorthak's own forward momentum carried it past him, and Jake was able to strike upward with his metal pipe at the softer skin under its belly. The Vorthak made a sound of pain and surprise. It spun around faster than Jake expected and caught him with a backhand swipe that sent him flying across the arena. Jake hit the wall hard and felt something crack in his ribs. Blood ran down his face from where the claws had grazed his forehead. But he was still alive and the crowd was going wild. Jake struggled to his feet and saw something in the Vorthak's red eyes that had not been there before. It was looking at him differently now, not like prey, but like something that might actually fight back. Commander Vextar's voice cut through the crowd noise. Interesting. The human shows more spirit than expected, but spirit will not save him from our champion's next attack. The Vorthak crouched low, preparing for what looked like its most powerful charge yet. Jake gripped his bent metal pipe and tried to ignore the pain in his ribs. He had survived longer than anyone expected, but the real test was just beginning. The Vorthak's massive body coiled like a spring as it prepared to launch its final attack. Jake could see the muscles under its armored hide tensing. This charge would be different from the others. The creature was putting everything it had into this one strike. Jake's ribs ached with every breath, and blood from his forehead kept dripping into his eyes. His metal pipe was bent almost in half from hitting the Vorthak's armored skin. Against any normal opponent, he would have been dead, several times over. But something inside him refused to give up. The crowd had gone quiet, waiting for the kill. Even Commander Vex's tar was leaning forward in his viewing box, expecting to see the human finally torn apart. But Jake was not thinking about dying anymore. He was studying the Vorthak's movements, looking for patterns. During their fight, Jake had noticed something the crowd probably missed. Each time the Vorthak attacked, it favored its right side slightly. The left front leg moved just a fraction slower than the others. Jake had hit it there earlier with his pipe. Maybe he had done more damage than he thought. The Vorthak exploded forward with incredible speed. Its 6 legs churned up sand as it closed the distance between them in seconds. Jake waited until the creature was almost on top of him, then dove hard to his left toward the Vorthak's injured side. The move caught the creature off guard. As it tried to turn and follow Jake's movement, its damaged left leg buckled slightly. The Vorthak stumbled and crashed into the arena wall with tremendous force. Chunks of stone fell from where its body hit. Jake rolled to his feet and saw his chance. The Vorthak was shaking its head, stunned from the impact. Jake grabbed a sharp piece of broken stone from the wall and ran toward the creature's side. He drove the stone deep into the gap between 2 armor plates near the injured leg. The Vorthak roared in pain and rage. It spun around and caught Jake with its tail, sending him flying across the arena again. This time Jake hit the sand hard and felt the air rush out of his lungs. He tried to get up, but his body would not respond fast enough. The Vorthak limped toward him, clearly hurt but still dangerous. Jake could see that its left side was now badly damaged. Dark blood was flowing from where he had stabbed it with the stone. But the creature still had 5 good legs and plenty of fight left. Something strange happened then. Instead of finishing Jake off quickly, the Vorthak stopped a few feet away and looked at him. Really looked at him. Jake found himself staring into those glowing red eyes and saw something he had not expected. Intelligence. Real intelligence, not just animal cunning. The creature tilted its massive head to one side, like it was trying to understand something. Jake slowly pushed himself up to a sitting position, moving carefully to show he was not attacking. The Vorthak watched every movement but did not strike. The crowd was getting restless. They wanted to see blood and death, not whatever this was. Commander Vextar's voice boomed through the speakers. "Finish the human, beast. Kill him now." But the Vorthak did not obey. It kept looking at Jake with what almost seemed like curiosity. Jake realized that this creature had probably fought hundreds of opponents over the years. Most of them had either attacked wildly or cowered in fear. Jake had done neither. He had fought smart and hurt the creature in return. Jake made a decision that everyone in the arena thought was insane. Instead of reaching for another weapon or trying to run, he held out his empty hands toward the Vorthak. He spoke softly, using the same tone he used when dealing with frightened animals back on the colony worlds. "Easy there, big fellow," Jake said quietly. "I know you are hurt. I know you are tired of this place too." The Vorthak's eyes widened slightly. It understood some of what Jake was saying. This was not just a mindless killing machine. It was a prisoner, just like Jake and all the others in the cells below the arena. Jake slowly got to his feet, still talking in that calm, gentle voice. "They trapped you here too, did not they? Made you fight when you did not want to. Made you kill when it was not your nature." The crowd was going crazy now. They were clicking and hissing angrily, demanding action. Some threw objects into the arena. Commander Vextar was shouting orders, but the Vorthak ignored everything except Jake's voice. Jake took a small step forward. The Vorthak tensed but did not attack. Jake could see old scars on the creature's hide that had nothing to do with their fight. Scars from electric prods and whips. Scars from being forced to perform for the crowd's entertainment. "You are not evil," Jake continued, taking another careful step. "You are just trying to survive, same as me. But what if we did not have to kill each other? What if there was another way?" The Vorthak made a sound Jake had not heard before. It was softer than its usual roars, almost like a whimper. The creature lowered its massive head until it was level with Jake's chest. Jake could feel its breath on his face, warm and surprisingly not unpleasant. Very slowly, Jake reached out and touched the Vorthak's snout. The creature flinched at first, then held still. Jake could feel it trembling slightly under his hand. When was the last time anyone had touched this creature without trying to hurt it? The arena had gone completely silent. Thousands of Zephyrians stared in shock as a human gently stroked their ultimate predator's face. This had never happened before in the long history of their blood sports. Commander Vextar finally found his voice. "What are you doing, human? Kill the beast, or it will kill you." Jake looked up at the viewing box and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "No, we are done fighting each other. We are both prisoners here. The real enemy is not in this arena." The Vorthak straightened up and looked around the stadium at all the Zephyrians. For the first time, Jake saw something new in those red eyes. Anger. Not the blind rage of a cornered animal, but the focused anger of an intelligent being who finally understood who was really responsible for its suffering. The creature moved, to stand beside Jake, facing the crowd rather than him. Its message was clear. The human was no longer prey. They were allies now. Commander Vextar was screaming orders at his guards. "Get down there and kill them both. Use the shock weapons." This cannot be allowed to continue. But before any guards could move, the Vorthak did something that changed everything. It walked over to one of the arena walls and began examining it closely. Jake watched in amazement as the creature used its claws to probe at what looked like solid stone. The Vorthak found what it was looking for, a section of the wall that sounded different when tapped. The creature stepped back and looked at Jake, then at the wall, then back at Jake. It was trying to communicate something. Jake understood. During his years as a cargo pilot, he had learned to spot weak points in ship hulls and station walls. This was the same principle. The arena wall was not as solid as it appeared. There was empty space behind that section. Jake picked up the largest piece of debris he could find and joined the Vorthak at the wall. Together they began working at the weak spot. The creature's massive strength combined with Jake's knowledge of structural weak points made a powerful team. The crowd was in chaos now. Guards were pouring into the arena from several entrances, carrying shock weapons and nets. But Jake and the Vorthak had found their target. With a final combined strike, a section of the arena wall crumbled inward, revealing a maintenance tunnel beyond. Jake looked at his unlikely partner and grinned despite their desperate situation. "Ready to get out of here, friend?" The Vorthak made that soft sound again, almost like purring. It understood. They were no longer enemies forced to fight for entertainment. They were partners in escape. Jake and the Vorthak crawled through the hole in the arena wall just as the first guards reached them. Electric shock weapons fired behind them, but the bolts hit empty air. They were inside the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the entire arena complex. The tunnels were dark and narrow, barely wide enough for the Vorthak to move through. Jake could hear shouting and alarms echoing from the arena they had just escaped. Commander Vextar was screaming orders over the speaker system, demanding that all security teams find and kill the escaped prisoners. Jake pulled out a small flashlight from his pocket that the guards had missed when they searched him. The thin beam of light showed a long corridor stretching in both directions. Pipes and cables ran along the walls, carrying power and water throughout the massive station. The Vorthak was breathing heavily from squeezing through the small opening. Its injured leg was still bleeding, leaving a trail on the tunnel floor. Jake knew they needed to find medical supplies soon, or his new partner would not be able to keep moving. "We need to find the other prisoners," Jake whispered. "If we can free them, we might have a chance to fight our way out of here." The Vorthak made a low, rumbling sound and pointed down the left tunnel with one of its claws. Jake realized the creature knew the layout of this place better than he did. It had probably been brought through these passages many times over the years. They moved quietly through the tunnels, following the Vorthak's lead. Jake could hear the sound of many feet running overhead as guards searched the upper levels. Every few minutes they had to stop and hide when security teams entered the tunnel system with bright lights and weapons. After 20 minutes of careful movement, they reached a section where the tunnel opened into a larger room. Jake's flashlight revealed rows of cages filled with prisoners from dozens of different species. This was where they kept the fighters who were not scheduled to die that day. Jake saw Susan, the human woman who had given him advice about surviving, in the arena. She was in a cage near the back along with several other humans he recognized from the ship that brought him here. Most of the prisoners looked weak and hopeless, but their eyes lit up when they saw Jake and the Vorthak together. "How did you tame that thing?" Susan whispered in amazement. "The Vorthak has killed every fighter they ever put against it." Jake walked up to her cage and examined the electronic lock. "I did not tame it. We became partners. This creature is just as much a prisoner as we are." The Vorthak approached one of the other cages where a smaller version of itself was locked up. Jake realized this must be a young Vorthak, maybe the large one's offspring. The two creatures touched noses through the bars and made soft sounds to each other. "My God," said a voice from another cage. Jake turned and saw a human woman with short dark hair and the uniform of a scientist. "You found Kale. I have been trying to communicate with him for months. You can understand them?" Jake asked. The woman nodded. "My name is Luna Chen. I am a xenobiologist. I was studying communication patterns in different species when the Zephyrians captured my research ship. The Vorthaks are not savage beasts at all. They are intelligent beings with complex social structures." Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Zephyrians had not just enslaved individual creatures for their arena. They had broken up families and forced intelligent beings to kill each other for entertainment. Luna continued talking while Jake worked on the cage locks. "The large one is called Groot in their language. He is Kale's father. The Zephyrians captured their entire family group several years ago. They killed the mother and other young ones, keeping only the strongest fighters." Jake finally got Susan's cage open using techniques he had learned for bypassing electronic systems on cargo ships. Susan stepped out and immediately began helping him free the other prisoners. Soon they had a group of over 30 beings from various worlds. "We need weapons," Susan said. "The guards will find us soon, and we cannot fight them with our bare hands." Groot, the large Vorthak, led them deeper into the tunnel system. Jake was amazed at how well the creature knew the layout of the station. They passed storage rooms, power generators, and waste processing facilities. Finally, Groot stopped at a heavy metal door marked with warning symbols. Luna translated what Groot was trying to tell them. "He says this is where they keep the weapons, taken from captured fighters. The Zephyrians store everything here instead of destroying it." Jake examined the door's locking mechanism. It was more complex than the cage locks, but not impossible to bypass. While he worked, some of the other prisoners kept watch for guards. They could hear search teams getting closer. The door finally opened with a soft click. Inside was a room, full of weapons and equipment from dozens of different worlds. There were energy rifles, plasma swords, explosive devices, and armor suits designed for various species. "Take only what you can carry and use effectively," Jake told the group. "We are going to move fast once we leave here." As the prisoners armed themselves, Jake found something that made him smile. In one corner was a box of human military equipment, including assault rifles and tactical gear. Someone had been very thorough in collecting souvenirs from their victims. Luna had found a translation device that would let her communicate more easily with the Vorthax. She explained to Groot that they wanted to escape the station entirely, not just hide in the tunnels. Groot's response surprised everyone. Through Luna's translation, he told them that escape was only the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire had dozens of arena stations throughout this part of the galaxy. Thousands of intelligent beings were being held as slaves and forced to fight for entertainment. Groot says his people were not the only ones taken, Luna explained. The Zephyrians have been raiding worlds for generations, capturing entire species to use in their games. Some worlds have been completely emptied of their populations. Jake felt a cold rage building inside him. This was not just about surviving one arena. This was about stopping a system of slavery and murder that had been going on for years. "Then we do not just escape," Jake said firmly. "We shut this whole operation down." Susan looked at him like he was crazy. "Jake, there are thousands of guards on this station. We are just a small group of escaped prisoners. How can we possibly stop the entire Zephyrian Empire?" Jake picked up one of the human assault rifles and checked its power cell. "We start here, with this station. We free every prisoner we can find. We destroy their arena and their ships. Then we find a way to contact the outside galaxy and tell them what is happening here." Groot made a sound that Luna translated as agreement. The big Vorthak wanted revenge for what had been done to his family and his people. Kyle, the young Vorthak, also seemed eager to fight back against their captors. As if to prove their point, alarms began blaring throughout the tunnel system. Commander Vextar's voice echoed from speakers hidden in the walls. "Attention all security teams. The escaped prisoners have freed others and taken weapons from Storage Room 7. They are to be killed on sight. No prisoners are to be taken alive." Jake looked around at the group of freed prisoners, all armed and ready to fight. Humans, Vorthax, and beings from a dozen other worlds stood together, united by their shared hatred of the Zephyrians. "Looks like they made the choice for us," Jake said. "We are all dead if they catch us anyway. Might as well make them pay for what they have done." Luna translated this for Groot, who let out a roar that echoed through the tunnels. It was not a sound of fear or pain, but of determination and rage. The other prisoners took up the cry, each species adding their own battle sounds. The revolution had begun. Jake led the group of freed prisoners through the tunnel system toward the station's main power center. Luna stayed close to him, translating between the different species in their group. Groot and Kale moved quietly, despite their size, using their knowledge of the station layout to guide them past security checkpoints. The first group of guards they encountered never had a chance. The Zephyrians were expecting scared, desperate prisoners running blindly through the tunnels. Instead, they faced an organized strike team with military weapons and a coordinated battle plan. Jake had split their force into 3 groups, the OW. Humans and other species with ranged weapons formed the first wave, hitting the guards with plasma rifles and energy weapons. Groot and the other strong fighters formed the second wave, using their natural abilities to overwhelm any guards who survived the initial attack. The third group, led by Susan, focused on freeing more prisoners from the holding areas they passed. Within an hour, their small group of 30 had grown to over 200 freed prisoners. Word was spreading through the station's prisoner population that escape was possible. Many species that had given up hope were now ready to fight for their freedom. Commander Vextar was getting desperate. His voice crackled over the station's communication system every few minutes, demanding reports from security teams that no longer existed. Jake's forces were moving through the station like a wildfire, growing stronger with each victory. Security. Alert level maximum. Vextar announced. All civilian personnel report to emergency shelters. Combat teams Alpha through Delta converge on Power Center 7. We will make our stand there. Jake smiled as he heard the announcement. Vextar was doing exactly what Jake had hoped he would do. By concentrating his remaining forces at the power center, the commander was leaving the rest of the station lightly defended. Luna, tell Groot to take half our people to the docking bays, Jake said. If we can capture some of their ships, we can get word out to other worlds about what is happening here. Luna translated the plan to Groot, who roared his approval. The big Vorthok selected the fastest and strongest fighters from their group and headed toward the station's ship storage areas. Jake continued toward the power center with the remaining fighters. The battle for the power center was the fiercest fighting Jake had ever seen. The Zephyrians had set up defensive positions with heavy weapons and energy barriers, but Jake's mixed force of different species each contributed their unique abilities to overcome the defenses. The flying creatures scouted ahead and reported enemy positions. The tunneling species created new passages that bypassed the main defensive lines. The humans provided tactical knowledge and weapons expertise. Even the smaller, weaker species found ways to help by jamming communication systems and disabling security cameras. Jake found himself face-to-face with Commander Vextar in the station's central control room. The Zephyrian commander was larger than any of his soldiers, with battle scars covering his armored hide and multiple weapons attached to his forearms. Impossible, Vextar hissed at Jake. Humans are weak prey animals. You should have died in the arena on your first day. How did you organize this rebellion? Jake raised his captured plasma rifle and aimed it at the commander's chest. You made a mistake, Vextar. You thought we were all just animals fighting for your entertainment. But we are people. We have families, friends, hopes, and dreams. And when you threaten those things, we fight back. Vextar laughed, a harsh clicking sound. Even if you kill me, you cannot escape this station. My people will hunt you across the galaxy. The Empire has 1,000 ships and millions of soldiers. Maybe, Jake said. But your empire is built on fear and slavery. Once other worlds learn what you have been doing, they will unite against you. And I have a feeling that unity is something your people do not understand very well. The fight between Jake and Vextar was brief but intense. The Zephyrian commander was stronger and had more weapons, but Jake had learned much about combat during his time in the arena. More importantly, he was fighting for the freedom of every prisoner on the station, while Vexatar was only fighting to preserve his own power. When Vexatar fell, the remaining Zephyrian guards lost their will to fight. Many surrendered immediately, while others tried to flee toward the escape pods. Jake's forces quickly secured the entire station. Groot returned from the docking bays with excellent news. They had captured 6 Zephyrian ships, including a fast courier vessel equipped with long-range communication equipment. Even better, they had found detailed records of other arena stations throughout the Empire. Luna had been working with the station's computer systems and made an important discovery. Jake, look at this, she called him over to one of the control panels. The Zephyrians keep detailed records of every species they have captured. There are hundreds of worlds that have lost people to their slave raids. Jake studied the data on the screen. The scope of the Zephyrian Empire's crimes was even worse than he had imagined. Entire civilizations had been reduced to scattered survivors in arena cages. But the records also showed something else important. These raids were not random, Jake realized. They targeted worlds that were isolated and could not call for help. The Zephyrians avoided any species that had strong military alliances. Susan joined them at the control panel. That means most of the galaxy does not know what has been happening out here. If we can get this information to the major spacefaring civilizations, they will have to respond. Jake nodded. Luna, can you and your team copy all of these records? We are going to broadcast them to every world we can reach. Over the next few hours, Jake's people worked to turn the captured arena station into a base of operations. The freed prisoners organized themselves into work groups, each using their species' particular skills to help with different tasks. The engineers worked on repairing and upgrading the captured ships. The communication specialists sent out messages to every known civilized world, transmitting the evidence of Zephyrian crimes. The medical teams treated the wounded and helped prisoners who had been injured in the arena fights. Groot and Kale worked with other Vorthax they had freed to plan rescue missions to other arena stations. They knew the locations of several facilities, where their people were still being held prisoner. The response from the outside galaxy was faster and stronger than Jake had dared to hope. Within days, messages started coming back from major worlds expressing outrage at the Zephyrian slave trade. Several powerful civilizations immediately dispatched military fleets to investigate. The Terran Colonial Alliance was among the first to respond. Jake was amazed to receive a personal message from Admiral Karen Murphy, commander of the Human Navy's Third Fleet. "Mr. Morrison," the Admiral's recorded message said, "your actions have exposed one of the most serious crimes against sentient life that we have ever encountered. The Alliance is forming a joint task force with our galactic neighbors to shut down every Zephyrian facility and free all remaining prisoners. We are also offering full citizenship and sanctuary to any beings who wish to relocate to human space." Similar messages came from dozens of other civilizations. The Zephyrian Empire suddenly found itself facing a united galaxy that was no longer willing to ignore their crimes. Jake stood in the station's command center, looking out at the ships arriving from across the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were coming to coordinate the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Luna joined him at the observation window. "You did it, Jake. You turned their own system against them. Instead of breaking us apart with fear and violence, you brought the entire galaxy together." Jake watched as Groot and Kale played with a group of young Vorthax who had been freed from other stations. Families were being reunited across dozens of species. Former enemies were working side by side to build a better future. "The Zephyrians made one big mistake," Jake said quietly. "They thought that because we were different species, we could never unite against them. They forgot that the desire for freedom is something all intelligent beings share." The Zephyrian Empire collapsed within months. Their leaders were put on trial for crimes against sentient life. The arena stations were converted into refugee centers and then into thriving multi-species communities. Jake Morrison, the cargo pilot who just wanted to deliver medical supplies to Colony 7, had accidentally started the largest liberation movement in galactic history. And it all began because the Zephyrians trapped him with a deadly predator, never imagining that everything would backfire so completely.